I dropped my keys on the marble counter. The sound echoed through the mansion like a gunshot in church.
Cold.
Final. Beautiful. My wedding ring followed, a 10-carat diamond that suddenly felt like a shackle disguised as jewelry. It clinked against the granite, spinning twice before settling near the espresso machine Graham never learned to use himself. He stared at me, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. For once in 3 years, Graham Beaumont had absolutely nothing to say. "What are you doing?" His voice came out smaller than I'd ever heard it. "You told me to walk away," I said, my voice steady as my heartbeat. "So, I am." "Clara, don't be dramatic." "Dramatic?" I almost laughed. "You just told me I wouldn't survive a day without you. Let's test that theory." Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The morning had started like any other Wednesday. Expensive coffee beans grinding. Lake Monarch glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Me, pouring his coffee in a silk robe that cost more than my first car. Him, scrolling through his phone like I was wallpaper. "Victor needs you to sign something," he'd said without looking up. "Just authorization papers for the trust fund transfers." "Those funds belong to the charity foundation now," I replied, keeping my tone light. "Professional. It's legally independent. I can't just move money around anymore." That's when his head snapped up. His eyes, the same blue eyes that once made me weak, turned to ice. "Excuse me?" I repeated myself, slower this time. Watched his jaw tighten. Watched his fingers grip the phone until his knuckles went white. "You've been making decisions behind my back?" He stood up, all 6 feet of entitled rage. "That money was supposed to be mine, my father's portfolio expansion. It was supposed to help women rebuilding their lives after abuse," I corrected. "And that's exactly what it's doing."
He laughed then.
Sharp and cruel. "This is exactly why women shouldn't handle serious money. You get emotional. You don't understand how the real world works." I'd heard variations of this speech before. At dinner parties where he'd talk over me. At board meetings where he'd explain my own design concepts back to me like I was stupid. In our bedroom where he'd remind me that everything I touched, wore, or ate came from his generosity. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the way he leaned in close, coffee breath hot on my face. Maybe it was the smirk that said he'd already won. Or maybe it was just 3 years of small humiliations finally adding up to something I couldn't swallow anymore. "Go ahead, Clara." He gestured toward the door like he was shooing away a servant. "Walk away. Let's see how long you last without my money, my name, my protection. You wouldn't survive a day." They say there's a moment in every ending where you can feel the shift. Where the air changes and you absolutely know, that nothing will ever be the same. This was mine. I looked at this man I'd built my entire world around. This man whose socks I'd organized by color. Whose favorite meals I'd memorized. Whose father I'd smiled at while he called me the pretty little addition to the Beaumont legacy. And I felt nothing but clarity. "You're right," I said softly, reaching for my keys. "I probably won't survive without you." Hope flickered in his eyes. Smug satisfaction spreading across his face. "But I'll do something better." I placed the keys down with deliberate care. "I'll thrive." The ring came off next. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of trying to be small enough, quiet enough, grateful enough.
Done.
"Clara, stop this childish." "I'll have my lawyer contact yours about the separation," I said, grabbing my purse. Just my purse. Nothing else in this house belonged to me anyway. "Not really. You're making a mistake," he called after me, his voice rising with something that might have been panic. "You think you can just leave? You think you'll be fine out there? You were rearranging furniture before I found you." I paused at the door. Turned back one last time. "Maybe I'll go back to that," I said. "At least furniture doesn't mistake cruelty for love." The door closed behind me with a whisper, not a slam. Quiet exits are always more powerful than loud ones. I didn't cry in the car. Didn't look back at the mansion in my rearview mirror. Just drove to the small lakeside inn where I'd booked a room 2 weeks ago, when I first realized this day was coming. My phone buzzed once as I checked in. A text from Graham. You'll be back by dinner. You always come back. I turned the phone off and requested a room facing the water. By the next sunrise, the empire that mocked me began to burn. What would you do if someone you loved told you that you were nothing without them? Would you stay to prove them wrong, or would you leave to prove yourself right? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I was 25 when Graham Beaumont walked into my life, wearing a smile that could sell anything. It was summer in Charleston, the kind of heat that makes everything shimmer like a mirage. I was working at Morrison & Webb, a boutique design firm where I spent my days picking out throw pillows for people who had more money than taste. Graham came in on a Tuesday. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive cologne that announced him before he even spoke. I need help, he said, leaning against my desk like he owned it. Just bought a penthouse downtown. Needs a woman's touch. I should have heard the warning in those words. A woman's touch. Not a designer's vision. Not professional expertise. A woman's touch, like I was a feature to be installed along with the marble countertops. But I was young, flattered, and he was charming in that dangerous way that makes you forget to ask questions. The flowers started the next morning. Roses. 24 of them, deep red like promises. The card said, "For making concrete and steel feel like home."
Gee.
My coworker Jenna whistled low. Girl, you better be careful. Men who send roses like that don't do casual. Maybe I don't want casual, I said, burying my nose in the petals. Maybe you should want careful, she shot back. I didn't listen. The dates came next. Not dinner at the local Italian place. Private tables at restaurants where they didn't print prices on the menu. Not movies. Weekend trips to New York on his private jet just to see a Broadway show. Not flowers. Jewelry that made my mother gasp when I showed her. Clara, sweetheart, Mom said one Sunday dinner, touching the diamond bracelet on my wrist like it might bite. This is moving very fast. It's called romance, Mom. It's called a whirlwind, Dad corrected, setting down his coffee. And whirlwinds don't build foundations. They destroy them. Dad taught literature at the community college. He understood metaphors. He understood stories. He understood that some narratives only end one way. But I was already too far in the fairy tale to see the wolf's teeth. Graham proposed after 6 months. New Year's Eve, Times Square, down on one knee while tourists cheered and cameras flashed. The ring was so big I actually laughed, nervous and overwhelmed and dizzy with the impossibility of it all. Say yes, he whispered, and the crowd chanted it. Say yes, say yes, say yes. How do you say no when the whole world is watching? We got married the following summer at the Beaumont estate. Rolling hills. White tents. 500 guests I didn't know. I designed everything myself. Chandelier centerpieces dripping with crystals, blush velvet drapes that caught the sunset, tables arranged like flower petals spreading from the center. You've outdone yourself, Graham's mother said, air-kissing both my cheeks. It's absolutely perfect. But it was Graham's father, Victor Beaumont, whose reaction I remember most. He shook my hand during the reception, firm grip, assessing eyes, and smiled. Not the warm smile you give a new daughter. The satisfied smile you give when a business deal closes in your favor. Welcome to the family, Clara, he said. Graham's made an excellent choice.
Choice.
Not love. Not partner.
Choice.
Like I was a stock he'd invested in. I caught Graham watching us from across the dance floor. He raised his glass to his father, and they nodded at each other. Some silent language I didn't speak yet. Jenna cornered me by the dessert table, champagne in hand and worry in her eyes. You good? She asked. I just married the love of my life, I said. I'm perfect. Then why do you look like you're trying to convince yourself? I laughed it off, hugged her tight, told her she was being paranoid. But that night, lying in our honeymoon suite while Graham slept, I stared at the ceiling and replayed Victor's smile. That knowing, victorious smile. And for just a second, one terrible, fleeting second, I wondered if I'd married a man or joined a corporation. The thought disappeared by morning. Graham woke me with kisses and coffee and promises of our future. We flew to Santorini for 2 weeks. White buildings, blue water, and enough distraction to drown out that tiny voice of doubt. I told myself I was being paranoid, ungrateful, overthinking. I told myself love was supposed to feel like this, overwhelming, all-consuming, bigger than yourself. I didn't realize yet that love isn't supposed to swallow you whole. And like every good employee, I soon learned what happens when you question the boss. Have you ever ignored red flags because the view is too beautiful to look away? Sometimes the prettiest packages hide the emptiest promises. What's a warning sign you wish you hadn't ignored? The mansion overlooked Lake Monarch like a castle judging its kingdom. Marble floors so polished you could see a reflection. Glass walls that turned sunsets into art. Furniture that cost more than my parents' house. Everything pristine. Everything perfect. Everything cold. I thought I'd feel like a princess living there. Instead, I felt like a museum exhibit. "Don't put your coffee there," Graham said one morning, moving my mug off the mahogany side table. "That's imported. Cost $40,000. "It's a table," I said. "Tables hold things." "Expensive tables hold value," he corrected. "Your coffee holds stains." That's when I started noticing the pattern. Everything in our home had a price tag attached to its worth, including me. The first dinner party was 3 months after we moved in. Victor wanted to introduce me properly to the circle, business partners, politicians, people whose names showed up in Forbes. I spent 2 days planning the menu, interviewed caterers, selected wines, arranged flowers. I wanted everything perfect. Graham walked through the dining room an hour before guests arrived and frowned. "The centerpieces are too tall," he said. "People won't be able to see each other." "They're supposed to create intimacy," I explained. "It's a design technique." "Clara." He said my name like a period ending a sentence. "Just lower them." I did. During dinner, I tried joining the conversation about commercial real estate development. I'd actually studied urban planning in college, had opinions about zoning laws and community impact. "The problem with mixed-use spaces," I started, "is that they often displace." "What Clara means," Graham interrupted smoothly, "is that she prefers residential aesthetics. She's got an eye for decorating, not economics." The table chuckled. Polite. Dismissive. I smiled and sipped my wine and felt something inside me shrink. It happened again at the next party. And the next. My sentences cut short. My opinions reframed. My expertise reduced to, "She's good with colors." Victor was worse. He'd pat my shoulder during cocktail hours and say things like, "The pretty face that keeps Graham grounded," or "Every successful man needs a beautiful distraction at home." I wasn't a person to them. I was an accessory. A conversation piece.
The wife.
My friend stopped visiting after a while. Emily called less. Jenna's texts went unanswered for days because I was too exhausted pretending everything was fine. One night, Sarah came over for wine. We'd been roommates in college, knew each other's secrets, finished each other's sentences. "You seem different," she said, curling up on the obscenely expensive couch. "Different how?" "Smaller." She looked at me carefully. "Like you're apologizing for taking up space." "That's ridiculous," I said, but my voice was too bright, too defensive. "When's the last time you laughed? Really laughed?" I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't remember. Sarah left early. We both knew why. The mansion was beautiful, but it swallowed joy like a black hole swallows light. I started spending hours staring at my reflection in those glass walls, watching the sun set over the lake, watching my own face blur into the landscape. Who was I becoming? The woman in the glass wore designer clothes, but had forgotten how to smile with her eyes. She said, "Yes, of course, and whatever you think is best, and I'm fine, really." She was polite, grateful, shrinking. I didn't recognize her. One afternoon, Graham found me standing there, forehead pressed against the cold glass. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Looking at someone I used to know," I whispered. He laughed. "You're being dramatic again. This is what you wanted, remember? The life everyone dreams about." But he was wrong. I wanted partnership, respect, love that didn't feel like a performance review. This wasn't a dream. It was a beautiful, expensive cage. And I didn't know it yet, but that reflection was already planning her escape. When did being grateful become the same as being silent? Drop a comment if you've ever felt like you were shrinking to fit someone else's idea of who you should be. I bought a house 3 months after leaving. Nothing like the mansion. No marble, no glass walls, no lake view worth $1 million. Just a small cottage 2 streets back from the water. Blue shutters. Creaky porch. Garden that needed work. It was perfect. The mortgage was in my name only. Every signature mine. Every decision mine. The freedom felt like breathing after being underwater for 3 years. I started consulting again, real design work, not just picking pillows for people who didn't respect me. Small businesses, women's shelters, community centers. Places that appreciated transformation on a budget. The foundation grew too. With Victor's stolen money recovered and properly allocated, we expanded programs across 3 states. Financial literacy courses. Legal aid. Small business grants for women starting over. Every month, I'd meet the women we helped. Their stories were different but familiar. Men who'd controlled their money, their choices, their sense of self-worth. And every month, I'd watch them rebuild. How did you know to prepare? One woman asked me during a workshop. How did you know to protect yourself before you needed it? I didn't know, I admitted. I just hoped I'd never need it. But hope isn't a plan. So, I built one anyway. The divorce was finalized in June. Graham didn't contest it. He had bigger problems. His lawyers were too busy keeping him out of jail to fight over assets. I took nothing from the marriage except my own things and my dignity. He could keep the mansion, the cars, the life we'd pretended to share. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Graham's handwriting on expensive stationery. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. Clara, it read, you've proven your point. I understand now that I underestimated you. That I failed to see your worth beyond what you could do for me. If there's any chance, any at all, please come back. We can fix this together. We can rebuild. I'll be different this time. I promise.
G.
I read it twice. Felt nothing but a distant kind of sadness.
He still didn't understand.
This wasn't about proving a point or teaching him a lesson. This was about me finally choosing myself. I wrote back on simple notebook paper. Graham, you were right about one thing. I didn't survive a day without you. I thrived every day after you. That's not an insult. It's just the truth. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. But you won't find it in controlling someone else.
Take care.
Clara. I mailed it and never looked back. Jenna visited that weekend. We sat on my new porch drinking wine that came in a box and eating takeout from containers. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. For what? For leaving.
For building this.
For not going back. Did you think I would? She shrugged. Love makes people do strange things, especially when it's mixed with money and history. That wasn't love, I said. That was dependency dressed up fancy. And now, I looked at my little house with its creaky porch and overgrown garden. My laptop open on the table with design sketches for a new women's shelter. My phone buzzing with messages from the foundation board about our next expansion. Now I'm learning what loving myself actually looks like. A month later, I was invited to speak at a charity gala. Not as Graham's wife or Victor's daughter-in-law. As Clara Beaumont, founder of one of the fastest-growing women's empowerment organizations in the state. The irony of keeping the name wasn't lost on me, but I'd earned it differently than they had. Standing backstage, I heard the MC announce me, a woman who turned personal pain into powerful change. A woman who proved that quiet strength can move mountains. Please welcome Clara Beaumont. The applause felt different than it had at Graham's parties. This wasn't polite social obligation. This was respect. I walked onto that stage in a dress I'd bought myself, carrying confidence I'd built myself, speaking words I'd earned the right to say. And for the first time in years, I wasn't performing. I was just being. But fate had one more meeting planned, one that would close the story for good. Healing isn't linear and it isn't fast, but it's always worth it. What's something you rebuilt after it fell apart? Graham thought I was just the pretty wife who picked out curtains. He had no idea I'd been paying attention. For 3 years, I'd sat through business dinners where men talked like I wasn't there. Listened to Victor explain his investment strategies to guests while I poured wine. Watched Graham sign papers without reading them because the lawyers handle the boring stuff. But I read everything. Every contract. Every quarterly report. Every foundation document that crossed our marble counter. See, when you're dismissed as decorative, people forget you have a brain. It started small. Graham put me in charge of the Beaumont Family Charitable Foundation, mostly for tax purposes and good PR. Just sign what the accountants tell you to sign, he'd said. Keep it running smoothly.
So I did.
But I also started asking questions. Why are we donating to this organization? I'd ask the accountant. Mr. Beaumont Sr. directed it. But what's the mission? What's the impact?
Shrugs.
Numbers. Nobody actually cared where the money went as long as it looked good on paper. That's when I started learning. Really learning. I took online courses in nonprofit management. Read books on financial law. Reached out to lawyers, women lawyers specifically, who understood what it meant to protect yourself when married to money. You're very thorough for someone just managing a charity, one lawyer noted during our consultation. I like to be prepared, I'd said. What I didn't say, I was preparing for the day Graham's mask finally slipped all the way off. The foundation had been set up loosely. Beaumont money flowing in and out with barely any oversight. Victor used it like a personal piggy bank, donating to politicians who'd grant him favors, funding charities that were really just business networking opportunities. It wasn't technically illegal, just morally bankrupt. So I rebuilt it.
Slowly. Carefully.
Every signature Graham never bothered to read, I restructured the bylaws. Created an independent board, real people, not Victor's friends. A senator's wife who actually cared about women's issues. A law professor. A forensic accountant who'd exposed corporate fraud before. You're building something real here, the senator's wife told me at our first board meeting. Your husband must be very proud. He doesn't really pay attention, I admitted. She smiled knowingly. Then he's a fool. The foundation's mission shifted. Instead of vague community support, it became laser-focused. Financial literacy and independence for women leaving abusive situations. Legal funds.
Small business grants.
Housing assistance. Everything I wished I'd had if I ever needed to leave. Clara, why all these changes? The accountant asked nervously. Mr. Beaumont hasn't approved. The board approved it, I said calmly. Check the bylaws. The foundation is independent now. Legally separate from Beaumont Holdings. But the family money. The initial endowment came from the family. Everything after that belongs to the foundation. That's how nonprofits work. He stuttered something about Victor wanting access to the funds for a real estate investment. Those funds are restricted, I explained. They can only be used for the foundation's charitable mission. Any other use would be illegal misappropriation. His face went pale. Does Mr. Beaumont know this? He signed everything, I said sweetly. He just didn't read it. That conversation happened 2 months before Graham's birthday disaster. 2 months before he told me I wouldn't survive without him. He thought control meant ownership. I thought control meant freedom. While he was busy mocking me at parties and dismissing my intelligence, I was building an exit strategy disguised as charity work. Every legal clause airtight. Every signature documented. Every dollar accounted for and protected by lawyers who didn't owe the Beaumont family anything. My friend Jenna asked me once, over coffee at a safe distance from the mansion, "Why are you doing all this? Are you planning to leave him?" "I'm planning to have options," I said. There's a difference. But deep down I knew. I was building a life raft while the ship was still afloat. Because some part of me, the part Graham hadn't managed to kill yet, knew I'd eventually need it. The night of his birthday, after he laughed at me and told me I was nothing without him, I sat in the dark and thought about everything I'd built. The foundation, the board, the legal protections, the quiet network of powerful women who now knew my name. Graham went to sleep thinking he'd won, that he'd put me in my place. He didn't know he'd just activated a bomb I'd spent 3 years carefully constructing. So when the time came, I didn't need to fight him. The papers would do that for me. Sometimes the smartest move is the one nobody sees coming. Have you ever prepared for something you hoped you'd never need? Let us know in the comments. The coffee machine hissed like a warning I should have heard years ago. Wednesday morning. Sunlight cutting through those glass walls. Graham scrolling his phone like I was furniture. Me, pouring his coffee in a routine so practiced I could do it blind. Victor needs you to sign something, he said without looking up. I set his cup down. What kind of something? Authorization papers. Trust fund transfers. New portfolio expansion. He waved his hand dismissively. Just routine stuff. My heart kicked once hard. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for. Those funds belong to the charitable foundation now, I said calmly. It's legally independent. I can't just move money around anymore. His head came up slowly, eyes narrowing. Excuse me? The foundation has its own board. Any major financial decisions require their approval, not just mine. Clara. He stood up, chair scraping against marble. What are you talking about? The restructuring we did last year. You signed off on it. Remember? His jaw clenched. That was just paperwork. Administrative nonsense. That was legal documentation making the foundation independent from Beaumont Holdings. I kept my voice steady. Professional. It protects the charitable mission. Prevents misuse of funds. Misuse. His voice dropped to something dangerous. You think my father is misusing funds? I think mixing personal investments with charitable money is illegal. Yes. He moved closer. I could smell his expensive cologne mixed with rising anger. You've been making decisions behind my back. I've been following the law. This is exactly why women shouldn't handle serious money. He was almost shouting now. You get emotional. You don't understand how business works. You don't understand that these charities are just tax shelters with good PR. I understand perfectly, I said quietly. That's the problem. His face went red. My father built this empire. That money is ours. You can't just lock it away because you suddenly grew a conscience. It's not locked away. It's being used for its intended purpose. Helping people. Helping people? He laughed, sharp and cruel. You want to help people?
Help me.
Help this family. Sign the damn papers.
No.
The word hung between us like a blade. What did you just say? I said no, Graham. I'm not signing anything that diverts charitable funds into private investments. He stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Like the decorative wife had suddenly developed opinions. Boundaries. A spine. You're making a huge mistake, he said slowly. Do you understand what you're risking? This family made you. We gave you everything. You gave me a golden cage, I whispered. There's a difference. Go ahead then. His voice turned ice cold. Walk away. Let's see how long you last without my money, my name, my protection. You wouldn't survive a day without me. Something inside me snapped. Not in anger. In crystal clear certainty. I walked to the counter. Picked up my keys. The metal felt light in my hand, lighter than 3 years of pretending. I placed them down carefully. The sound echoed. My wedding ring came next. 10 carats of beautiful eyes. What are you doing? His voice cracked slightly. You told me to walk away. I grabbed my purse. So, I am. Clara, don't be ridiculous. I'll have my lawyer contact yours about the separation. You're throwing away everything. The house, the lifestyle, the security. I'm throwing away a man who thinks love is the same as ownership. I walked toward the door. My hands weren't shaking. My voice wasn't breaking. For the first time in 3 years, I felt completely steady. You'll be back, he called after me. By tonight. Tomorrow at the latest. You always come back. I paused at the threshold. Looked back at this man I'd tried so hard to love. This mansion I'd tried so hard to make a home. Maybe I'll go back to rearranging furniture, I said. At least furniture doesn't mistake cruelty for love. The door closed behind me.
Soft.
Final. I got in my car, the one thing I'd insisted on keeping in my own name. started the engine, pulled out of the circular driveway for the last time. I didn't cry, didn't look back in the rearview mirror. Just drove to the Lakeside Inn and checked into the room I'd reserved 2 weeks ago. The manager handed me the key. "Welcome back, Mrs. Beaumont." "It's Miss Clara," I corrected gently. "Just Clara." My phone buzzed as I unlocked the room. A text from Graham. "You'll be back by dinner. You always come back." I turned off my phone, opened the curtains to face the lake, sat on the bed, and finally let myself breathe.
Free.
He thought I was leaving him. He didn't know I was taking his future with me. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's refusing to settle. Have you ever had to choose between comfort and freedom? The Lakeside Inn smelled like pine and possibility. I slept better that first night than I had in months. No Graham snoring. No mansion's oppressive silence. Just the sound of water lapping against the shore and my own quiet breathing. Morning came soft through cheap curtains. I made coffee in the tiny pot provided, bitter and perfect and mine. My phone had been off since yesterday. I turned it on. 43 missed calls. 17 voicemails. 32 text messages. I sipped my coffee and scrolled through the chaos. Victor's assistant. "Mrs. Beaumont, please call immediately. Urgent matter." Graham's boss. "Clara, we need to discuss something. Call me." Unknown numbers. Frantic messages. All variations of the same theme. Emergency, urgent, please respond. The voicemails were better. I put them on speaker while I watched the morning light dance on the lake. "Clara, this is Rebecca from Mr. Beaumont Sr.'s office. There's been a situation with the foundation accounts. We need your signature too." Delete. "Ms. Beaumont, this is James Crawford, CFO of Beaumont Holdings. We're unable to access certain funds and—"
Delete.
Then Graham's voice, trying for calm but landing on barely controlled panic. "Clara, whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. This isn't funny anymore. The foundation accounts are frozen pending some ridiculous investigation. Just come home and fix this." I almost laughed. Fix this. Like I was the maid cleaning up their mess. By noon, the news alerts started popping up. Beaumont Financial Holdings under investigation for charity fund mismanagement. Federal audit launched into Beaumont Family Foundation. Billionaire family faces scandal over nonprofit violations. I read every article twice. Let the words sink in like sweet vindication. The board I'd carefully assembled had done exactly what I'd hoped. The forensic accountant found the discrepancies. The law professor filed the formal complaint. The senator's wife made sure the right people were paying attention. Every illegal transfer Victor had made. Every personal investment disguised as charitable giving. Every tax fraud hidden in paperwork Graham never bothered to read. All of it documented. Reported. Under federal investigation.
My phone rang.
Victor's personal line. I answered this time. "Clara." His voice was granite trying to sound like silk. "We need to talk." "Hello, Victor. What have you done?" "I protected the foundation's mission. That's my job as director." "Your job," he said slowly, "is to do what this family tells you to do. Actually, my job is to follow the law, which I have. Completely." Silence. Then, "You're making a terrible mistake. Graham is my son. This family has resources you can't imagine. Lawyers. Connections. We will bury you." "You're welcome to try," I said calmly. "But the investigation is federal now. Your connections won't help with that. You ungrateful little—" "I have to go, Victor. The board is calling. Have a nice day." I hung up and turned off my phone again. The afternoon brought reporters to the inn. I watched from my window as they tried to get past the manager. She turned them away with the efficiency of someone who dealt with worse. By evening, the second wave of articles appeared. Beaumont stock drops 15% amid charity scandal. Victor Beaumont faces calls to step down as chairman. Graham Beaumont's position at company under review, sources say. I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle I'd picked up at the corner store.
Cheap.
Screw top. Tasted like freedom. My lawyer called from a secure line. "You've really done it," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Did I do too much? You did exactly enough. Everything was legal. Every signature documented. Every transfer properly authorized or properly blocked. They can't touch you. What about Graham? What about him? He signed documents without reading them. That's not your fault. And Victor? He's facing federal charges for misappropriation of charitable funds. That's not your fault either. That's his fault for actually committing the crimes. I watched the sunset paint the lake in oranges and pinks. Beautiful. Peaceful.
Mine.
Clara, my lawyer said softly, how long have you been planning this? Since the day I realized quiet preparation is stronger than loud confrontation. You're brilliant. I'm just done being underestimated. That night, I slept with the windows open. Let the lake breeze wash away 3 years of mansion air. Let myself feel small in the best way, not diminished, but unburdened. Quiet justice doesn't scream. It simply lets the guilty fall into traps they built for others. But when the calls stopped coming, I knew the real damage had only begun. Revenge is a dish best served legal. Have you ever watched someone face consequences for underestimating you? Drop your stories below. The mansion I'd walked away from became a crime scene by Friday. Not the dramatic kind with yellow tape and sirens. The corporate kind, men in expensive suits carrying boxes of documents, forensic accountants setting up in the dining room I once hosted parties in. I know because Jenna texted me photos. She'd somehow befriended one of the investigator's assistants. Girl, they're tearing that place apart, her message said. It's beautiful. The news coverage was relentless. Every major outlet picked up the story. Billionaire family. Charity fraud. Federal investigation. It had everything people loved to watch burn. Victor's face appeared on every channel. Older suddenly, smaller, caught off guard by cameras he usually controlled. These allegations are baseless, he told reporters. A misunderstanding that will be cleared up shortly. But the stock market didn't care about his confidence. Beaumont Holdings dropped another 20%. Board members started resigning. Partners started distancing themselves. When the empire begins to crack, everyone runs for the exits. Graham's face appeared too, but not in front of cameras. In leaked photos from the office, him looking disheveled, tie loose, the golden boy tarnish showing through. Graham Beaumont suspended pending internal review. The headlines declared. His boss, the man who'd called me 13 times that first day, released a carefully worded statement about maintaining integrity during this difficult investigation. Translation: Graham was being thrown under the bus to protect everyone else. My phone rang Tuesday afternoon. Graham's number. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity is a powerful thing. Clara. His voice was hollow.
Defeated.
What did you do? I followed the law, I said simply. You're destroying everything. My father's legacy, my career, the family reputation. I'm not destroying anything, Graham. I just stopped protecting you from your own corruption. Corruption? He laughed bitterly. This is how business works. This is how wealth is maintained. You knew that. You benefited from it. I benefited from a lie, I corrected. There's a difference. Silence. Then his voice cracked slightly.
Please.
Just sign the papers. Release the accounts. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Your father stole from a charity. You helped him. I documented it. We gave you everything. You gave me a cage and called it a castle. Then you mocked me when I found the key. I never meant, he stopped. Started again. That night. My birthday. I was drunk. I didn't mean what I said. Yes, you did, I said quietly. You meant every word. You just didn't think I'd actually leave. Clara, please. He was begging now. I'm losing everything.
My job.
My reputation. They're talking about criminal charges. I could go to jail. Then you should have been more careful about breaking the law. I love you. The words landed like stones in water. Too little, too late, and completely unconvincing.
No, you don't, I said.
You love having me. There's a difference. What do you want? Money? A better settlement? I'll give you anything. I want you to understand that I was never yours to give things to. I was always my own person. You just refused to see it. I hung up before he could respond. That night, Victor's formal resignation was announced, forced out by his own board. 50 years of building an empire, undone by his own arrogance. The irony was almost poetic. My lawyer called with updates. The feds are building a case. They found evidence of years of misappropriation. Victor's facing serious charges. Graham's situation is murkier. He might get off with fines and probation if he cooperates. And me? You're a hero. The whistleblower who exposed corporate greed. The foundation you restructured is being held up as an example of proper nonprofit management. I didn't do it to be a hero. I know. You did it to be free. The hero thing is just a nice bonus. I walked down to the lake that evening, watched families having picnics, couples walking hand in hand, normal people living normal lives without mansions or empires or the weight of other people's expectations. A little girl ran past me, laughing as her dog chased her in circles. Pure joy. Uncomplicated. I smiled. Really smiled. The kind of smile that comes from somewhere deep and honest. Graham had said I wouldn't survive a day without him. But survival implies barely hanging on. What I was doing wasn't survival. It was something much better than that. For the first time, he didn't know how to buy his way out. Sometimes the best revenge is simply removing yourself from the equation and letting karma do its work. What's the best example of natural consequences you've witnessed? Graham's birthday. I planned it for weeks. Not the extravagant parties he usually threw, 50 people, open bar, catered everything. Something different. Something us. Or at least what I hoped we could still be. Just the two of us. Quiet dinner on the terrace overlooking the lake. His favorite bourbon, the small batch stuff his grandfather used to drink. And a cake from Rosie's Bakery, the little place in downtown Charleston we used to visit when we were dating. Remember when we'd sit in that corner booth? I'd said while ordering it, you'd steal bites of my lemon tart. The baker smiled. Y'all were so sweet together. He'd look at you like you were the whole world. Past tense.
Were.
I pretended not to notice. The day of his birthday, I set everything up perfectly. Candles. His favorite playlist. The bourbon in crystal glasses catching the sunset. I even wore the dress he'd complimented once. Emerald green. The color of hope. 7 o'clock came and went. No Graham. 8 o'clock. I texted. Everything's ready whenever you are. No response. By 9, I was standing in the kitchen in my apron, staring at a cake that was supposed to mean something. 33 candles waiting to be lit. That's when I heard the cars. Multiple cars. Doors slamming. Laughter. Loud. Drunk. Careless. The front door burst open. Graham stumbled in with 6 people I'd never met. 3 men in loosened ties. 2 women in tight dresses and tighter smiles. All of them reeking of expensive alcohol and entitlement. Surprise. One of the women squealed, throwing her arms around Graham's neck. He looked at me standing there, apron on, cake in hand, shock on my face, and smirked. You didn't really think it'd be just us, did you, Clara? He laughed, and his friends joined in. Birthdays are for people who matter. The words hit like a slap. Graham, I said quietly, I planned. You planned a boring dinner for 2. He walked past me, barely a glance. I planned a celebration. Big difference. His friends flooded into our home. Champagne bottles appeared. Music blasted. Someone knocked over my carefully arranged flowers, reaching for the bourbon I'd bought for us. Oh, this is cute, one woman said, pointing at the cake. Did you make this yourself? Her tone made it clear cute wasn't a compliment. I stood frozen while they took over. My quiet evening shattered into pieces I couldn't collect. Graham's arm around a blonde woman's waist. His friends making jokes I wasn't included in. My emerald dress suddenly feeling foolish.
Desperate.
I disappeared to the kitchen and started cleaning up the disaster spreading through my home. Spilled drinks. Broken glasses. the smell of perfume and privilege mixing into something toxic. You okay, honey? I turned. One of the men, older, kinder eyes, stood in the doorway. Fine, I lied.
He doesn't deserve you, he said softly.
Just so you know. He left before I could respond. By 2 a.m, they were finally gone. The house looked like a crime scene. My careful plans reduced to trash bags full of empty bottles and broken expectations. Graham was on the couch, tie undone, eyes glassy. I sat across from him, still in my dress, still trying to understand how we got here.
Why? I asked. Just that. Why?
He looked at me like I was stupid for asking. You're lucky, you know, he said, words slurring slightly. If it weren't for me, you'd still be rearranging pillows for a living. Maybe I'd be happier, I whispered. He laughed. Actually laughed. Then leaned forward, eyes suddenly sharp despite the alcohol. Go ahead, Clara. Walk away. You wouldn't survive a day without me. The room went silent except for the sound of my heart breaking in slow motion. He stood up, stumbled toward the bedroom, and threw one last sentence over his shoulder. Birthdays are for people who matter. Remember that. I sat there until sunrise.
Didn't cry.
Didn't move. Just sat in the ruins of my hope and felt something fundamental shift inside me. By morning, he'd passed out in our bed. I was still on the couch, staring at nothing and everything. He went to bed laughing. I went to bed awake and planning. Have you ever had a moment where someone showed you exactly who they were and you couldn't unsee it? Tell us about the moment everything changed. The gala was at the Riverside Hotel, elegant but not excessive, beautiful but not cold. I was there representing the foundation, scheduled to speak about our new programs. I'd practiced my speech 3 times, but I wasn't nervous. This was my work now. My purpose. The ballroom glittered with the usual suspects: politicians, philanthropists, people who threw money at causes that looked good on tax returns. I recognized several faces from Graham's old dinner parties. They smiled at me now. Genuine smiles. Not the polite but dismissive ones I used to get. Miss Beaumont, your work is incredible, the mayor's wife gushed. We'd love to partner with your foundation. Clara, I've been following your story, a local journalist said. Would you be open to an interview? You've inspired so many women, someone else added. My daughter included. I shook hands. Made conversation. Felt the strange disconnect of being celebrated in the same circles that once ignored me. Then I saw him. Graham stood by the bar, alone, drink in hand. He looked older, not just in time but in weight. The kind of aging that comes from consequences finally catching up. Our eyes met across the room. He didn't smile. Neither did I. Just a moment of recognition. Of history. I could have looked away. Probably should have. But something made me walk over. Clara. He said my name carefully, like testing thin ice. Graham. You look. He trailed off. Happy. I am. He nodded slowly, studying his drink. I read about the foundation's expansion. 3 new locations. Impressive. Thank you. Silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable, just honest. I'm sorry, he said finally. For everything. For how I treated you. For not seeing you. For Graham. I stopped him gently. I didn't come over here for an apology. Then why? To show you that I'm fine. That I'm more than fine. That everything you said I couldn't do, I did. He flinched slightly. I was wrong. Yes. You were. My father's in prison, he said quietly. 18 months. Financial fraud. I heard. I got probation. Community service. Lost everything else though. The job. The house. Most of my friends. He laughed bitterly. Turns out loyalty is expensive when you're broke. I'm sorry that happened. Are you? He looked up, genuine curiosity in his eyes. I thought about it. Really thought. I'm sorry you're hurting. I'm not sorry you faced consequences. He nodded, understanding the distinction. Fair enough. What are you doing now? Teaching, he said. Business ethics at community college. The irony isn't lost on me. I almost smiled. Almost. Maybe you'll be good at it, I said. Maybe this is your second chapter. Maybe. He paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you found yours. The MC's voice cut through the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our keynote speaker will begin shortly. That's me, I said. Graham nodded. I know. I came to hear you speak.
Why?
Because I want to understand.
Who you really are.
Who you always were that I was too blind to see. I looked at this man I'd once loved, once feared, once escaped. He seemed smaller now. Not in a satisfying way, just in a human one. Good luck, Graham, I said softly. I mean that. Clara? He called as I turned to leave. Thank you. For what? For not destroying me when you could have. For just walking away instead. I smiled. I didn't walk away to destroy you, Graham. I walked away to save myself. There's a difference. I left him at the bar and walked toward the stage. The spotlight was bright. The crowd was large. But I wasn't nervous. I told my story. Not for revenge, not for attention, but because somewhere in that audience might be a woman who needed to hear it. A woman sitting in her own golden cage, thinking she couldn't leave. Thinking she wasn't strong enough. Smart enough. Brave enough. Not all victories shout, I said, near the end of my speech. Some whisper so quietly that only the guilty can hear. But the ones that matter most? Those are the victories that rebuild. That empower. That turn pain into purpose and fear into freedom. The applause was thunderous. Standing ovation. Cameras flashing. But the only thing I noticed was the woman in the third row, crying quietly, gripping her friend's hand. I saw myself in her, 3 years ago, trapped and scared and unsure. After the speech, she found me. Thank you, she whispered. I needed to hear that I can leave. You can, I said firmly. And you will. And you'll be amazed at who you become after. She hugged me tight and walked away with her head a little higher. That's when I knew. This was why I left. Not to punish Graham or Victor. Not to prove I was strong. But to become the woman I'd always been capable of being. And to show others they could too. I drove home to my little blue-shuttered house that night, kicked off my heels, made tea in my own kitchen, and sat on my porch watching the stars. Graham had said I wouldn't survive a day without him. He was wrong. But the truth is, I didn't start living until the day I left. And that's the story of how I walked away from a billionaire's mansion and found something worth more than money. My own voice, my own power, my own life. If this story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own strength, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We share stories like this every week, stories of resilience, transformation, and quiet justice. Drop a comment below. What would you do if someone told you that you were nothing without them? Your story might inspire someone else to find their courage. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear it. Sometimes one story is all it takes to change a life. Thank you for being part of this community. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share more stories with you soon. Until next time, remember that quiet strength changes the world. You just have to be brave enough to use it.